Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Antares News Network. My name is Jordash, and I'll be your lovely host today. Hello, people in chat. I see you there, infamous Neckplays Shadow Master. Thank you for using my cat emote with the cool shades. Oh, it's War BB of BB and the Boys. I think we have a pretty good lineup for you today. Our first guest is from Parts Unknown, Dat Playful Sin, more often known as DPS, or Mush by only his closest of friends. I'm sure he has a lot to say about a lot of things. After that, we're going to be chatting with Baylor, the GM of Space Force in the Double O's. And finally, we'll be talking to Mr. Black, part of the OPA leadership conglomerate. Our chat with Mr. Black today is not going to be like our standard interviews, because OPA is mega boring and there's just not much to talk about. So Mr. Black wanted to give out his Antares GM rankings with stats based on fun factor, strategy, and personality. So I hope everyone is looking forward to that mess in an hour. So this is going to be our first non-teens focused show, so I hope we're able to adapt to that change. And last week is the last time you're going to be hearing from Scott and Frosty on here for a long time. And while you won't be able to hear them on the show for a while, I can promise that they will be here in spirit. And their spirits specifically are going to be represented by this potato for Scott and this sack of potatoes for Frosty. And before I dive into some Antares talk, there are a couple of non-Antares headlines that I wanted to talk about. Let's see, let's pull up some stuff about the mini server start. There was a mini server start, also known as a MSS, that started on Saturday. If you are like most people and have no idea what a mini server start is, I'll give you just a little brief rundown. Here are some rules. They set up a bunch of rules about how engagement actually works and all that. It's two teams of players start some accounts on some old dead server like Juno when they start in the same galaxy. They try to make sure they start in the same center regions. And they're basically just trying to kill each other as hard as they can for 1 week. The most important rule is that you can't interact with anyone or anything that isn't involved in the mini server start. So you can't try to get some big plunder or something or steal debris that's just randomly floating around. The overwhelming majority of the time, people do follow the rules, except for one time when CyberOptics was a huge cheater dog, and that was confirmed. So he's not allowed to do them anymore. And most importantly, I do want to thank First Blood, that's FB on the team list there, for actually sending me all this mini server start related information so I could give you any details about it, because I didn't know anything about it. I've never played them, and usually it's like the same 20 people that play. But they usually do these every 3 months or so, and there's a mini server start channel in the unofficial Discord if you're interested in learning any more about it. The other big news story this week is that on Friday, goddamn Scott and Belwar invaded me through the Zero's wormhole on Utopia. Not my guild, I don't have a Utopia guild, but specifically me. NSFW and BYOB launched almost 500 million fleet through the wormhole, and basically only my fleet was sitting on the wormhole at a position. And my biggest regret in the year 2020 is that I immediately ran my fleet away without getting a screenshot of that overkill invasion just to kill me. And I'm pretty sure with all the teens allying up now, this is a clear attempt on a China-style suppression of the free news. And I don't think anything else has happened on any other server because things mostly don't. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk about how all the clusters have packed up in Antares. Since last week, almost right after the show on Sunday, basically all the meta clusters have packed it up officially. In the Zeros, SF, Space Force, and BV and the Boys, they've all packed it up. They're together. I think SF might still be packed to Bob and Thog or something like that, but I'm not sure. Thog's kind of low on the fleet, so maybe they'll get farmed out. Who knows? The Tens, in their big alliance, they have USSR, formerly known as Heist, with 50 people. They have VVV with 50 people. They have HC with almost 50 people. They have Ready with almost 50 people. They have XB with almost 50 people. And WP with about 20 people. The lower teens were pacted to DEF and LGN before, but they kind of got cut out. So they're going to get farmed by the rest of the teens, I guess, before the teens move on. So there's a couple hundred people in our big alliance in the teens. We're going to move on to the 20s, who are also pacted together. There's 50 people in OPA. There's about 25 people in U Corp. There's about 25 people in Mean. There's about 30 people in Shreks. There's about 30-some people in ZZZ. There's about 30-some people in Hive. So they have, what is that, like 100, almost 200 people in the 20s too. Another fun cluster to talk about. And the 30s, guess what? They're packed at 2. They have Japan. They have War. They have Space Goats. They have Mo. They have Box. They have War Legend. And that's close to, somewhere between 250 to 300 people. A lot of people and a lot of Zergs. All the clusters are boring. I guess the Zeros are the least boring because they have by far the least people in their cluster alliance. There's also the 40s are open, but no one knows what's happening there. It's just like the Wild West. It's unsettled. I'm pretty sure like 48, 49 is a 40s guild, but maybe. It might not be. Who knows? But real quick, we're just going to take a couple of minutes to look over the rankings to see how they've only slightly changed over the last week. Because since no one really fought or did anything besides a few ninjas, there's not too terribly much to look at. As far as just guild levels, last week OPA was the top guild for overall level, and Japan had the top averages. This week, nothing has changed. It's because everyone that wasn't already semi-pacted, they're all full pacted. No one's doing anything. No one's fighting, so the stats are the stats. The current top 5 are OPA, USSR, Japan, VVV, and War. And up next, we're going to take a quick peek at the fleet counts. Let's go to the next page. There. Nope. All right, there's the fleet. Last week, the number 1 in total fleet was OPA because we didn't have anything to use it on. This week, the number 1 in total fleet is OPA because we didn't have anything to use our fleet on. After OPA is USSR, Japan, VVV, and HC. That's almost the same top 5 as it was last week. And U Corp has the number 1 fleet average size. They're just over 300k fleet apiece, so that's pretty high. And last, we have some rankings experience. The number 1 guild is War Legend, formerly known as SWAT. Nice dated reference there for War Legend. Numbers 2 and 3 for experience are Space Force and BV and the Boys and the Double O's. And real quick, I do want to put a call out for like any players to give me like their best not shown in ranking stats. Like if you think you have the highest production cap, the first, I don't know, base 14, base 13, something crazy like that, or the most occupations, let me know. I'd like to brag about it on your behalf. So if you let me know about your dope account stats, I can let everyone know. And I did want to give a little bit of an individual player shout out. No tech for Frosty, but here we have top players ranked by level. You can see U Corp's basically got a lockdown on that. Mean has the players with the most fleet. And there's some players with the most experience. Surprisingly, a mixed bag. Alec is still near the top there. He got knocked out, and some guy Dark Angel's the number 1 guy now. But that's all the rankings. And real quick, I do just want to thank everyone for following before the show. A ton of people did. So thank you for tuning in, watching, all that good stuff. I also want to thank everyone who's interviewing on this show, like DPS and Baylor, who thought that messaging me like 3 minutes before the show started was a great time to ask their final questions while I was getting everything set up. But I did want to thank everyone for following, subscribing, all that good stuff. In case you don't check the forums, make sure you are following the channel, and because I'm not sure I'm going to do noon every day. Got this kid, who knows what's going to happen. And if you don't use Twitch often and you don't know, if you link your account to your Amazon Prime account, which everyone has, you can get like a free subscription and get emotes by subscribing to the channel. But that's enough self-promotions, and if I don't see any fun, creative questions in chat, aside from just general flaming, which is 99% of the chat content, I'm going to take a moment to get set up for our first interview with DPS. So give me a minute just to get the call ready, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, we have DPS on the line. Say hello, Mr. DPS. Yep. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And first question I like to ask everybody: can you give us just a little brief history? When did you start playing Astro 10 years ago, or whenever that was? When was your first guild? It was probably 10 years ago or something like that.
Out the game, so I was pretty much perma-oct for 2 months. After that, Espeon, I started. That's the first time RPR was created, alongside of another GM, which I forgot his name, but he was a piece of shit. And I didn't want to GM at all because GMing sucks, and I didn't want to do it. But then I got fucking owned by goons. So moving on, many years later, Kappa is when I first came back, and that was my first official GM, completely on my own, on next to China's massive Zerg called Meow, I think.
You know who you were also next to?
Yes, who?
You were next to a guild called West, which was my guild, and you allied with China and helped them kill my guild.
Oh, yes, yes. That was you?
Yes!
Wow. So, yeah, I was Kira back then.
Yep.
Not many people know that.
Yep, so DPS confirmed forever friend of China, way back starting on Kappa, for sure. Oh boy, yeah, but yeah, I remember that. We talked about that before. I'm sad that you forgot.
I didn't remember who it was. So that's pretty funny it was you.
Yep.
Sorry about that. But honestly, the only reason if I ever ganged on you is because you threatened my small ass guild and you wanted to destroy us, which you were way stronger. So I just packed everybody else to come Zerg you. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you recall, but I was the first team to actually launch while everybody was blob staring and invade you and attack all the bases and escaped.
I'm not sure why you would have packed it against me. I'm really well known for my great diplomatic skills and alliances and keeping them, so I don't know how you would have ended up against me.
I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah. But back to Antares. You started in the 20s with, was it just by yourself or you had like a small group, but then you decided to relocate out like once the 40s opened because you could probably could tell that the 20s were going to be boring if you didn't just packed up with everybody, including OPA?
Well, I started 29. First of all, I got invited by a lot of groups, and I'm like, fuck that. And I just wanted to start with a small group with just my friend that's learning the game. So we decided randomly starting 29, no plans, no objectives, and Shrek appeared next to us. They only started with like 10 members at first, so I'm like, okay, let's farm them. Then they jumped to 25. So we still farmed them. They got really mad, but hurt, and then they didn't want me to join anymore, so they just tried to suicide into my bases, thousands of fleet. So I decided to relocate to the 20. And there I met Dark Angel and EE, who also threatened me and wanted to kill me just because I was DPS.
Standard, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so I took half his guild from him and took over 820. Then ZZZ popped up near him, and Oppa came also. So he got zerged to death, completely destroyed, embarrassed. And I think you just mentioned he's top in XP now?
Yes, he is.
Fun. So then Stella Ross came to me with Tony Stark, and they're like, hey, we want to start in the 40s. But this is like a week after 40s has already opened.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be way behind. And they called me a pussy if I didn't want to come. So I'm like, fuck you guys. So I joined them in the 40s.
And real quick, did you just call Stella Rosa Stella Ross?
Yeah.
It's ROSA. It's not Ross, like Ross from Friends. It's not like that.
I didn't even notice.
Do you have any like big plans in the 40s playing with Stella up there? Or is everyone up there kind of for the lulls? It's like everyone that did relocate up there just kind of doesn't want to deal with the kind of boring cluster meta and just wants to dick around in the 40s.
That's exactly what they said. Everybody's packing each other, especially in the 20s and the teens, and everybody's getting sick of it. So they're like, fuck it, let's start the low 40s. And even though we're going to be a week behind, a lot of us are experienced. Or so I thought. And yeah, so we're just having fun down there, getting our ass kicked by random noobs suiciding into us just because we hit their bases that have no defenses or fleet.
Yep, that That sounds like fun that you actually get to play against some newbier players. I wanted to talk about one of your main boys, Golden Sun 3DS. Are you responsible, well, for two things? One, are you responsible for all of his, and I use the term loosely, memes in the unofficial Discord? And also, are you responsible for his widespread bomber strategies?
Okay, first the memes. He was like that before, like when we all met him. Second, I met him, I think, a few servers back. What was it? I don't even remember. The one before Nexus.
Mystic?
No, after that, or was it Mystic? I don't remember. Either way, he was just someone in the that I noticed that actually built jump gates really fast and his eco was really high. So I contacted him, and I taught him a little bit of my strategies and my combat strategies. He really knows how to build an account, that's for sure, but he didn't know how to fight. And the bomber strategy is all me. Anyone who uses it at this point, it's mine. Roids, same thing.
You invented asteroids?
No, first of all, the meta was Rockies all the time, and you're a noob if you went Roids. I went Roids since Sigma, and then people started to realize, oh, why is this guy rank 1 when he's not even cheating? Oh, how is he even beating me when I'm farming hundreds of multis? Yeah, because I went fucking Roids. And then people started catching on, and by the time Unrest came out, Roids got a huge buff just because you can't be perma-locked anymore. And as you could see from Nexus, how everybody decided to use the roids in combination with the meta of Iron Frigates and Frigates. That was genius. I gotta admit, that was the thing I was worried about. If they were to start copying that, then we would all be fucked.
So you invented frigates and having some ion frigates to protect from capitals?
No, that is a meta. I haven't done that. It's just bombers is my meta for combat fleet, and roids is my meta for bases.
Mm-hmm.
But that got popular on Nexus, especially because they pulled it off so well. And which is kind of why I zerged them in the first place with Cloak and the gang and teens, was because I knew that 1v1 against the 30s, they would have kicked their asses because they were just that much better. Then they got mad, so they fucked me up into Nexus. And with Cloak backstabbing me, I kind of turned the tables and kind of fixed my mistake, I hope. So shout out to all the lowers. Sorry for zerging you guys.
Yeah, because we had a feeling that if we invaded you in the 20s, that eventually you'd get sick of sitting in the lowers with them, and then you'd eventually get sick of them like not helping you in the 20s at all, and that would break that alliance. And then it worked, and then for some reason Zahaga tried to invade you, and that wasn't very successful on Nexus.
Yeah, you guys were dead on right with that. When you guys were, well, obviously you were using propaganda, but it worked because they actually were using us as meat shields, and they didn't even want to help. And the moment I'm like, well, fuck, the moment I said fuck that, they were suddenly willing to help kill you guys, and I'm like, no, fuck that. I needed you guys as insurance in case, because if we eliminated the lowers, then what's going to stop them from zerging the rest of the server? Nothing.
Yep.
So I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to make peace with my greatest enemies and fix my mistakes.
Cancer Crew is your greatest enemy because they cheat so hard all the time?
Not just Cancer Crew, Royals, any big group that uses massive multis.
Oh yeah, I guess that's everyone basically. That's most people.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that Nexus crash real quick? I know this is Antares news, but I want to talk about that Nexus crash where Zahaga launched into you and then they died.
Oh my god. Okay, first of all, there's a little pre-story to that. Zahaga thought he was the big shit. Like, his ego was through the roof. He treated me like I was a child, a whiny little bitch. That's literally what he called me. And he thought he was a big dick because he had #1 fleet and he's just zerging everything effortlessly while he had 2 zergs protecting them. So I decided that to use his ego against him. And I'm like, the only chance I have is if he comes to me. And if he comes alone. So, because if they use 2 out of 3 Zerg guilds, it doesn't fucking matter the game anymore. You're just getting Zerged by 5 times the numbers. It's over. There's no winning that. But if I could bait him alone and use his fucking arrogance against him, then we have a chance. Just a chance of winning. Not to mention that he's the meta spec, and I'm Bomber, which counters the meta spec. So his first launch was a failure. Because of that, he's a pussy. Then I realized that he's probably going to try to get help this time, which he was. I had insight on his information. He was asking for help, blah, 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 trying to propaganda me, whatever. So I just played my cards right. DPS is arrogant prick, egotistical. It pissed the shit out of him. He ended up coming along with the top averages and fleets from both guilds. So he supersized his guild. When he was already rank 1, the fucker supersized his guild. So I'm like, fucking bitch. But as long as he still comes alone, there's still a slim chance. So I prepared a few things. One, I needed to make sure, because he's a pussy, I needed to make sure he comes alone. And Insomniac messaged me and said that he's been talking to my members, trying to get people to suicide me, right? Because I'm famous for people backstabbing me, right? So when I heard this, I'm like, this is perfect. If I give him a false sense of security, not only is he rank 1 in fleet and he has the highest average and he doubles my fleet size, but if he thinks there's suicides too, that might be just enough for him to have balls enough to face me. So Insomniac said that, and then one of my GMs from the the sub guild, messaged me the same thing, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy is messaging everybody and everything to try to get suicide on me. He's tryharding right now, and this is going to be more believable if everybody wants to suicide me. So I planted the seeds. That's what the video was about. It was showing Insomniac, it was showing Kuju and then Zeno all like baiting him to come alone. And when that happened, I also got Wolf as insurance, because even if we did crash, they could just send another Zerg and secure the pile. So Wolf was my backup plan. And it all came together in a week, and that crash happened for all those reasons. And we barely won too. Like, I think like 1% difference, 2%, not much.
Yep, it was close. Oh yeah, and speaking about that video, did you realize there were so many times when you had like a message up there that was only up there for like 1 second and you couldn't read it?
Oh, because I figured if people cared, they would just pause the video and read it. And yeah. I have to keep up with the pace of the video. Also, the fact that I did make a mistake. Some people pointed it out. I don't remember who, but I should have probably just kept the logs of the entire chat separate, so people could just read it instead of being stuck pausing the video over and over again. So my bad.
Yeah. So yeah, that was all the Nexus news. I think that covered literally every detail that possibly could have for that, and your opinion of Zahaga.
You can imagine how he feels now.
I bet. Good God, DPS, that was a massive flaming. But we already talked about you take claim for the asteroid meta because people figured out that you can get the cheap rings on it to protect you when you leave the cluster, and you get that eco boost from the crystals on asteroids. But I wanted to talk more about just the actual like cluster meta of how the 0s, 10s, 20s, 30s, they're all basically super boring clusters already. How do you feel about just your thoughts on like the meta itself and how...
Oh, you mean packing everybody and being pussies?
That's the one.
Yeah, but not everybody does that. Some people actually stand up for themselves. But the majority of players are pussies, yeah.
Do you think people are going to... Everyone is just going to try to ninja the 40s now because you have said they all suck?
Well, honestly, we already are being ninja by Mo, U-Corp, and I think there's another group coming. But yeah, we're already getting hit hard. Like, but we could just drop our levels. We're like, what, 3 weeks behind?
It can't be 3 weeks behind the server.
10 days right now. So what is everybody else?
Is the server is 4 weeks old. So
yeah, 3 weeks.
No, if you were 3 weeks behind, that would have meant you... Oh, did you really restart just 1 week ago?
Yeah, I'm like 10 days old. I got 10 bases.
Bizarre. Well, most other people restarted in the 20s like 2 or 2.5 weeks ago when they opened.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Stellar Raw,
crazy,
and Tony Stark are fucking insane.
Yeah, they're a little bit. Yeah, Stella was super mad that we packed it and didn't want to do... Oh, everyone in chat is saying... you need to name names of who sucks as GMs that are pussies for pacting each other. Chad is demanding it.
Okay. Man, I should have prepared a list. Well, aren't you in the OPA?
Oh yeah.
So you guys start there. Shrek, U Corp have always been one group, so I guess they count as one person. So I wouldn't say that they packed everyone, but they did pack you guys, right?
They
right off
did.
The bat. You guys didn't even fight.
I don't think we did. No.
Yeah, even when I was there and I said that I just wanted to fight for a week or two, until they actually beat me, they got butthurt over that. It's a game. Like, why the fuck would you pack everything and just sim and play Farmville for the next month until your rings are up?
Astro Empires is a long-term game, DPS. You gotta play the long con.
Not anymore.
It's not?
Every server dies in like 2 months. And less than that because everybody's fucking zerging allying each other.
All right, well, we have 1 month of the game left before we get to that 2-month mark, so we gotta really speed things up, I guess. So you hate everyone in the 20s because you relocated out of there. You probably hate Zahaga in the 30s because you've already made your opinion on him pretty clear.
Well, let me guess. He packed it, everybody, made a super zerg, and he gangbanged one guild? Isn't that what happened?
In a shocking turn of events, that is kind of what happened in the 30s.
Yeah, I think at least the lowers are fighting, aren't they?
They were.
Baylor is fighting someone?
They were with Cancer Crew, and then I think they packed it just a couple of days ago.
Okay, that's not bad. At least it was a couple of days ago, so props for them.
Yeah, I think, because they were doing just little bits of ninjas. Because Cancer Crew loves just ninjaing all the time. And I don't think they wanted to get completely sat on them like they did on Utopia against him. Oh, Cactus Chewer says, thank you, DPS, for loving Cancer Crew.
Oh yeah, if they actually fight, it's not that bad. But if they're in Sigma and they AFK in the fucking 20s forever, well...
I was kind of AFK the whole time on Sigma, so I don't know what really happened there. But I guess Cancer Crew sucked on Sigma. Jot that down, everyone.
Well, the first few months, but they made up for it at the end.
Yeah. Oh, they say to blame Frosty, which makes sense. Let's see. Did we get through all of our questions? Mush?
I think so.
I think we did. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up about Antares? Any other people that you hate that you want to inform them publicly that you hate also?
I don't really hate many people. Like, I have a lot of fans who hate me, but I just hate the concept of cheating and zerging. That's it. Like, if people want to reform themselves, Cancer, and not cheat, you feel free to message me and join my team for another time. Oh, and Alicus, I'm planning to maybe ally him for the next server and make a guild with him. I thought that would be news.
I can't wait till you guys break up your guild 2 or 3 weeks into the server because you can't get along. But that sounds fun. Everyone, jot that down for next server. Oh yeah, but they're saying you're already pre-packing and zerging. That sounds pretty rough.
Well, I'm not 100 fucking people. We're like, what, 10 people each?
Not yet. Each? Not yet. So for the first pre-packed for the next server, we have DPS and Alicus, the first Zerg. So we all need to start counter-Zerging that alliance.
Well, I wouldn't call it the first pre-pack because the groups always play with the same people over and over again, right? So technically, they're always the pre-pack. If these guys want to grow some balls and maybe split their team up, meet new people, I think the server could be way more fun.
Yeah, you're right. It could be. Yeah, I do like jumping around to different groups, but yeah, it doesn't happen as often as you'd like. But I think we're starting to run out of time, DPS. Thank you so much for coming on. This was great. This was fantastic, DPS. I loved it.
I'm going to read all the hate chat afterwards.
There was only love in there. Only love. But thank you so much for coming out, DPS. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. And great job with all this stuff that you're doing with this.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just trying to do some community fun stuff. But again, thanks for coming on. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. While I get ready for Baylor's up next, I'm going to set us up for a short break. So don't go anywhere. Try to regain your composure from that great DPS interview, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back with Baylor. I'm sure if you've been playing this game for a while, you've seen Baylor around. You can say hello, Baylor.
Hi, everyone.
Actually, I just thought of a question I didn't prep for you. You used to be just Bal or Or. When did you change from Balor to Baylor?
Yeah, so that would have been, I guess, Quantum, I want to say, and that was kind of an off server for me, but Balor was the old name. Baylor's, you know, Ben Solo to Kylo Ren, dark side name, light side name. So I don't mind either one, but Baylor's the more current.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of the old servers, those were Baylor or Balor servers at the time.
Yep. Yeah, cool. I'm glad we got that grammatical situation out of the way. Um, So, when did you actually start playing Astro Empires? I know you, like, to me, it's almost like you came out of nowhere and you were like the heir apparent to like the Black and Adex guilds. They passed a lot of their guilds on over to you. But when did you actually start playing?
Yeah, so my mic it's right next to my mouth, but I'll talk a little louder. So I started on Juno 28 in Judicators UFP, and then I switched sides and became an Addicts guy, and Deity was there, and I got to see them work, and they won that server war, and that was pretty cool. Later on, Addicts gave me my first GM, which was Juno, and Masa gave me the second, that was Lyra. So around that time, you had Juno almost 2 years old, Lyra almost 1 year. Myra was heating up and the Nova would launch in a few months. And so I had a cluster of servers and GMs at that time. And that's around when we met, Jord.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I derbed original Cloak and took over some guilds in Myra. And then Nova was the first time I actually made a guild.
Was that Nova Guild Royals? I wasn't really playing much around that time.
Nova
Was that
was
Royal?
King and Royal was Pegasus.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I missed all those letters. I was out. Um, Yep. So that was your first server. Those were your first guilds. Your starting group for Antares is a little bit smaller than your usual startup group. And then it kind of got together, and you have your close to 50 players now. Did you mean to bring that smaller group of players? Were you just trying to maybe have a little bit more fun this server, not try to just dominate from day one?
So it wasn't really intentional or anything like that. Basically, I think everyone started forming their guilds in January, and I didn't. So I kind of just started asking around about 2 weeks before, and of my own guild on Utopia, there wasn't even a lot of that player base up for grabs. A lot of them went back to where they originally came from, which is Czar people, and where else did they? Some of them went with the Cloak 30s, and some of them went with CC. So there wasn't even that many there up for grabs. So I started with like 14. I have 13 Elo right now, I think. And so it's definitely the smallest group I've ever started with. And can you repeat the question again?
Oh yeah, just were you trying to, like, obviously since you had a smaller group, were you purposely trying to not start with a really big group and just try to like dominate your cluster and server from day one?
Yeah, so that was definitely part of the goal. And the only cluster that we really dominated, or that was Pegasus, that we killed very early and very quickly. But from my point of view, back in the day for me, it's Nova, and those were 3-year servers, and I would say it's always been a slow, long grind, and we always had enough people for what we needed to survive against some pretty large guilds. 150 was a typical guild at the time, and all the clusters, Gambler in the Nova 20s, Nard, Legio, Midway, they were all about the same 150. So I didn't think my count was excessive for dealing with that. But as far as this server, we had basically 10 people for day one people, and that was pretty interesting.
Yep, yep. I guess with this smaller starting group, should I assume that you didn't bring that notorious spreadsheet of logins for this server?
Well, I'm going to talk about that, but I had one other thing that. So then the login spreadsheet, give me 1 second. But I'm glad you asked, because it's actually, there's a lot of misunderstanding and legendary development. But the original spreadsheet was actually Wicked's, and not a very well-known player, but he suicided the guild, and he posted a picture of his virtual box too. There was a second login spreadsheet, and that was no one. That was the Lyra guild, and they were mostly real people who gave logins to Jacob, and a lot of those accounts were suicided because a bunch of people had access to that spreadsheet, and then Jacob gave access to other people. And then Dream was also suicided by its own spreadsheet. So that was Wicked's VirtualBox. And nowadays, I like to settle accounts with Reels, and you know that, George, because that's how you ended up with me on a few servers.
Yeah.
And I prefer Reels. I think it's a lot better way to have a guild, especially in crashes, and you're simming econ for long months at a time, and accounts die when construction stops. It's something that FK once said. And I was very lucky to find a lot of old player base for Kepler, and we settled everything for the FTW crash, and we dubbed Master's Guild using 1.5x Zerg.
Yep. Yep, I guess.
And then as far as
there's
what were
more.
you gonna say?
Oh, no. I was going to bring it back to Antares, but it sounded like you
I
had
was going to bring
more.
it back to Antares.
Oh, perfect.
On 30s, they have 3 times as many players, so they're going to have actually 3 times as many quit accounts. And I'm only half of the 100 and zeros. So 30s, they're actually going to have 6 times as many people turning in quit accounts and logins on average, 6 times the upper limit of what I could acquire if I even wanted to do that, which I don't. But if I did, it would be a lot less than 6x.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about having the bigger guilds. You have a lot more to fill up. That makes sense. In the double O's in Antares, your Space Force, you had the Space Force Academy, but it's sort of like the Space Force Academy, like you've taken almost everyone out of there. There's only like 10 people left in that guild when I was looking this morning. You guys have recently pacted with BV and the boys, Cancer Crew. Are there any other like little small groups you're friendly with in the Zeros?
Yeah, not really. I have a pact with Bob because I initiated that before the CC thing, and I didn't know if they wanted to do anything. So that's going to be a little awkward there, but there's not really a lot of guilds as far as the middle guilds, AOT and 5, Bob 5-7, Thog, and they're on CC's side of the border anyway, and that's really too bad for them. It's not my problem. And yeah, it's a little bit awkward with Bob, and we'll just have to, talk to them at some point. And
yeah, I get you.
oh, and Rebens, yes, I guess they know that I have the pact with CC, and he's in Bob, so that's.
Oh, 4 Ravens. Oh, too bad. Surprise.
Yeah, and then SFA, yeah, it's like we're basically gonna hollow that out, and there's a few pretty good reels there with high econ development.
Yeah, that's good.
It allowed us. We just couldn't take more people really, and then we kicked out a few inactives, and then one other guy rage quit and deleted everything. Who was, by the way, one of the original 13 Elo who I had.
Fun. It's always fun when something tilts someone 3 weeks in for someone, and they just instantly delete everything. Yep.
Yeah, it was an old enough. He's been on some old servers, so it was unexpected. But it's just how.
Yep. Before you guys packed it up with Cancer Crew a few days ago, I was going to ask if you were going to grant Cancer Crew mercy this server after outnumbering them and just flattening them on Utopia. So we get to skip that now, but you do get to still claim that you granted them mercy from your heart of gold.
Well, and they granted me mercy, and I'd say there's lots of mercy all around, and it goes back to Utopia and what happened on. I have a lot of them who did fight for me on Utopia, and it would be kind of awkward not to if they wanted to handhold on Antares. And so what happened on Utopia, because I know we talk about a lot, and probably a lot of people don't know, but I had about 120, and CC contested us. I zerged them using 1.5x, and then I got counter-zerged by 3.5 versus 1 in top guilds, and then we made peace. And then the long story short, FK disappeared, and I forced him to merge, and he wasn't there on Nexus either, but he's here now, and they, Alex and Compost, they fought in the crash, and they were 2 of our most important fleets. They made really good hits, and a lot of CC's main people and leader types, they've earned my respect and my trust, and I think it's going to be really good here on this server.
Yep. Can you explain how somehow the zeros, your cluster that you're in, is ended up not being a huge Zerg aside from people ending up not starting in the zeros, that cluster, this server?
Yeah, you said zeros. Well,
Yeah.
so it's the smallest cluster by a lot. We have a little less than 100 in top guilds, and then the next I counted 129 for 20s. So we're the smallest cluster by far, and we were the last to have a cluster packed.
Yeah, the least Zergy cluster, but I think we can all.
And
Yep,
good.
and
Imagine if I had 300 people. No, seriously, imagine if I had 300 or 200, and I think you'd have a lot of people pissed off if
well,
I had the numbers that Sahaga.
yeah, that would put you on par with the teens and 30s. So
Yeah, it would be.
you wouldn't
I'm
even
not
stand
saying I
out.
would kill the server badly because I wouldn't, but me or FK for that matter could really raw dog the server pretty badly with 200 or 3.
So you're saying Baylor plus Cancer Crew, an unstoppable combo.
I'm
if
saying
if you
that.
had more players.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that 330s is no match for 100 zeros.
Mm-hmm. So I guess now that you've packed it up, do you, it's hard to ask. Like, oh, what are your plans? How do you think you're going to interact with other clusters? Because you can't tell me too much. But it's like, do you think that because the 30s and 10s they're a bit bigger than the 20s? Do you think one of them are going to be coming out of the cluster soon? And you're the smallest cluster, so you might be the easiest one to get invaded.
Yeah, so we're probably the easiest mark, but we said you're saying who's going to pack who first?
Packed up or come out of cluster first?
Yeah, so I think that as far as I think there's very little chance that the 30s and the 10s will go full Zerg together. And I'd say that the 30s mega pact and the 20s mega pact internal to their clusters, that all but ensured that there would be hand holding in the zeros. And I'm pretty sure it did influence the BB decision to pact early. And I heard there was a second straw poll, and I did a lot better on that one. So the early pact circa day 25, it's nice. I'm always cluster fighting usually up to day 60, even day 80. And I think that there's a pretty good chance that the 10s does drop everything and mega pact, and then you'll have a 10s mega pact. And I know that Scott and Belwar, they're very good friends on Utopia and in general. I just don't really see how Scott will derb his good friend and using 1.5x Zerg, including 100 China. I really don't see that happening. I think he'll intercede with Trace for Belwar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're already. So that already. I figured that it seemed like it had already happened, but
Oh yeah, they're
so
all
I kind
packed
of
it up. Yep.
assumed, like, but I didn't know that. All right, so that happened then, and so then you have Belwar, Trace, China, ready, and so what? That's 250, 257. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Wait, yeah. So that's new information. I suspected that would happen, and I think that. So what was the original question again?
The original question was, were you listening to the first 10 minutes of the show when I talked about the packs that each cluster had? And the answer to that is no. But
well, no, I was listening, but I was also kind of like getting ready. So.
Yeah, I know. Just messing with you, Baylor. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's
well, I was asking, like, who do you think is the most likely to come out of their cluster first now that 10s, 20s, 30s are all packed it up and down?
Well, it's got to be 30s because, I mean, they've just had the biggest head start and they're the biggest. So as far as leaving their cluster first, probably 30s. And as far as the first realistic out of cluster pact between 250 man guilds, I gotta go with my initial guess instinct and say Shreks and UCorp are going to be sneaking around and shopping around, and they might say, oh, we don't have a pact with the 30s, we only have a pact with like 50 guys in Zahaga guild, or maybe they'll pact with Trace and he might accept, he might not. So then I think that's kind of how it's going to evolve, that it'll be a lot of kind of like douchiness and oh, we're not really pacted except we are kind of thing.
So you're just gonna say flat out that you expect a douchiness from Detroit Fans Guild. I think we can just settle with that. That
Well,
might
I don't
happen.
know. I don't really know Detroit very well. I know Meow and Detroit are in business together, and they're typically company men
Hmm.
with Zahaga and the Super 30s.
Yeah, they
So,
usually do.
I
Yeah.
just So I think that will evolve kind of naturally.
Yeah, like maybe will. I mean, I'm in OPA in the 20s. Hopefully, that doesn't happen to us. That would be unfortunate. But yeah, that could be a potential start to the clusters. One getting balanced or unbalanced with the others, and then actually getting to invade. Yep,
Mm.
that could happen. Like we're pacted with them right now, so we can't just say, "I bet it'll happen," and here's our plans if they do. But I mean, you're not wrong. It could happen.
Yeah. I
Yep.
had a little bit more about so as far as the new servers and the starts, they're always a lot of fun, and you never know which old returning player base is going to return, and there's always a few and wild cards, and so that's always a lot of fun. And Marvin the Martian was one of them on Pegasus when I had that Galaxy, and with Royal, and he was also there on Kepler. So having a few people, like I said, there's not that many in the guilds, and Marvin's not with me on this server, but it's always good to have a few people who you've banged with before in some of these crashes. And then as far as the fun scale of servers, they all have their moments that are like tens, like the 38 crash. And overall, I'd say Juno was an 8, Myra 8, Nova 8, Pegasus 9 because I didn't have to do any work and we steamrolled. I'd give Kepler early game 10, which was it was my other smallest guild before we became huge. Utopia 7, and V3 is 12.
A 12 out of 10, that much fun?
12.
Oh, well,
And
that's
that's scientific. That's scientific.
yeah, it's a great scale there from 8 to 12. Well,
But no,
oh, no.
there's a lot of satisfaction there. It's been a lot of fun, and I think it's gonna be like the old timey servers that lasted a really long time, like those Juno Wars that I talked
Mhm.
about, and also the new V2 servers. Those we were talking about the long game with DPS, and the early game is very competitive, but it's really the long game, and that's where I'm very strong, and the early game not so much. But that's I'm just reading the sidebar there a little bit.
If you're getting some love in check, Fuckabank says, "Good. We'll make this a good server, bud." Baylor, when did you reform? Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of old timers that came back for the server, like you said, and that's made
Yeah,
it a
so
lot
I'm
of
skim
fun.
reading that a little bit, but I'm not really. We'll talk about that at
Yeah.
some point. Did you have any more questions?
Yep. I think that went through our whole list. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Well, so I guess the last thing I'd say, we didn't talk about asteroids too much, but as far as SF goes, space. So basically, what happened was I didn't have a real guild name ready for the minute before the server launch, and Elo Diamond that's a real guild name that I put thought into, and Space Force is not. So it was never intended as a non-temporary or final guild name. And so I'm not necessarily like stuck with it or committed to it. I had nothing, so I came up with something, generic space roleplay guild, essentially.
Mhm.
And then the asteroids, I think that's very amusing that I don't think you can take credit for, something being good and everything do it. So I'm not sure that DPS inventing or discovering the asteroid meta is really, really a thing. And I was never an asteroid guy before, to be honest, on V1 or even V2. I know a lot of people liked them and they were viable, but they just weren't better than Rockies, and you can defend with. Anyway, so I'm all asteroids now, not all, but mostly asteroids, and I have 2 crystal moons. I have a few planets, and that's basically what I told my guild. Third position is OP, fourth is OP, asteroids are OP, crystals are pretty good.
Yeah, because crystals, any base or asteroid type that has crystals, that's the meta now. Just the eco is just so much higher. You can't pass it up, or you're going to fall so far behind. You're not
Yeah.
wrong. Yep.
Well, so I copied the DPS build without any knowledge of his ratio of like 6 asteroids, 2 crystals, 3 planets. But It's I think the V3 Astros are really cool, and it's definitely created a lot more options, and you can find previously junk Astros in the center and build a jump game.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's just something new and different, refreshing to finally have a change because there's 1.5, there's 2.0, and after how many years has AE been out? Almost 15. This is only our third
It's
type.
really the first time I've done asteroids. I mean, they've always been but I really like them now. They're just great to build, cheap, fast econ, and the rings later, so you have an end game cricket and early game, econ rush.
Yeah, Armor 22 can't come soon enough though. Those terraforms are getting out of control.
Yeah, I'm hitting the TFs, and the last thing I would emphasize is we got 0 for free with not even 10 people in day 1 people, and dodged literally 700 people. So that was I was pretty pleased.
Fortunate,
with that.
yeah.
I think it was a good outcome, because I'm loyal to my player base, and I only had like 10 people, so I wanted a good outcome, and to settle them somewhere that was reasonable. And I knew that FK's Guild would want to test our metal for a little bit up to a point, and I didn't expect that it would be a day 20 launch, but the rest of it was kind of how I expected it.
Yep, no, that was not Baylor firing his gun in the background. That was me dropping my phone. Sorry to disappoint everyone. But that gunshot did mark. I think we're running out of time, Mr. Baylor. It's fine. Yeah, Mr. Blackwell, I think he'll let it go. He won't be offended. But I did want to thank you so much for coming on, talking about a whole bunch of things. Got to hear about some old servers and new servers, because you probably you lucked out, and you're going to have the most fun server in the. Because you have the least Zergy cluster, so that should be a lot of fun going forward for you.
Yeah, it's a lot less hassle. Large guilds are fun, but they're also a lot of hassle. So I think this is going to be pretty.
Yep. Well, again, thanks so much for coming on, Baylor. I appreciate it. And I guess say goodbye.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's a really fun broadcast that you do, and I'll see you around.
Yep. Adios.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's say thanks again for Baylor for coming on. Again, we're going to take another little quick break. I'm going to get set up for our talk with Mr. Black with the unofficial Mr. Black GM rankings. So stick around for that, and we will be right back. All right, guys. We are back with Mr. Black. Say hello to everyone, Mr. Black.
Hello, everyone.
Word for word, all right. But Mr. Black, yeah, we don't feel like talking about himself or our guild or anything else. But we want to talk about other GMs. Every cluster has a couple of their major GMs. There's Baylor and FKA in the lowers, and so much and so on. You see on the chart there. We have a few. What's the word I'm looking for? Calculatable. Like statistics. There's the aggression and fun factor. There's the fleet command and strategy, personality / leadership, and then more importantly, would Mr. Black ever play under them and why? So, yeah, you put together this chart. Do you stand by all these rankings?
Well, I want to pace it by saying that no one got a 10 out of this chart. I don't know if it's because maybe the best were just back in the past, but the new AE meta is so much different these days that really no one deserves a high ranking. But there are going to be some pretty good rankings on here. So, yep, I put this together and thought it'd be a little bit of fun to see kind of where everyone ranked out. And I've got a little bias on who I'd play for or who I wouldn't. So why don't we just give it a roll and see how it looks?
Yep, let's give it a roll. All right. Number 1, we have Baylor up first.
All right. Baylor.
Yeah, whichever. Baylor. Yep. Yeah. I'm so used to Baylor. I'm used to Baylor.
All right. So there it goes. Okay, populated. Aggression and fun factor. I give that a 7. Hold on a second. People are complaining about my mic. Is this not working right?
I turned you up a smidge in the last 10 seconds, so it's probably a bit better now.
Well, gosh, I'm using an iPhone, so with some earplugs, so I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be good last time we checked.
I do too, but like it sounded fine. But I guess sometimes it comes through a little quieter on this. Not a big deal. I've turned you up, okay. And because Funkabank has also said it for like every person, and everyone could hear it. Else could hear DPS just fine.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So Baylor, aggression and fun factor. I would say Baylor guilds are very PC. They're not super exciting, but Baylor has just kind of a way to engage his players that people kind of fall in line. He runs it it's like a military. To me personally, it's not my type of guild that makes it super exciting. So, and also Baylor tends to have the numerical advantage, not always on the side where he's going up against the odds. I think there was one server, Kepler, he mentions, but I wasn't part of that, but I heard that he did really well there. So, but I give him an overall 7. Fleet command and strategy, 7.5. Personality and leadership, I like the guy. I give it an 8. Would I play for him? Maybe. And that's if he maybe wants to train the next generation of AE players. I might be along for that ride.
Yep. And real quick, a Quizer in chat asks, where's Trace on this list?
Trace is not eligible to be a GM.
All right, fair enough. But next up on the list, I see we have FKA from Cancer Crew. Let's see where they got.
My boy Chris. All right, Chris, fun factor, 9. Give him some really high marks there. Fleet command and strategy. I haven't seen too much fleet command from Chris. So I just kind of give it a 7. He does a lot of micromanaging early on in the servers during the Galaxy fights. So I respect that. Personality and leadership. I think he's a really fun guy, 8.5. Would I play under him again for the 3rd time? I don't know. I've had twice with him, and twice he's quit on me. So that's that.
Quitter boys, Cancer Crew. If they get bored, or they just troll themselves out of the server, sometimes that'll happen.
Yeah, well, Chris, he's just partially biased against boomers, and I don't know what it is. Just he's going to be turning a boomer shortly in 2 years. So I don't know what his bias is all about. But that's partly the reason. I don't know. He doesn't really get along with some of the boomers that I have.
Yeah, boomers are the way to go. That's the way of the future, not the past. That's what I say. Anything else you had to say about FK?
No, that's good for now.
No, that's all. Next up,
We
have...
got a long list, so let's kind of grind this out.
Yep, all right. We have Belwar up next in the lower 10s. How do you feel about him?
So Belwar, my first experience with playing with Belwar, that is least in my memory bank, was back on Pegasus. Baylor and Belwar were supposed to hold P26, and we had a very long, robust leadership discussion about Baylor's proposal to split that team up, and we approved it. And then Belwar completely got steamrolled on his Galaxy in P25. So we lost the Galaxy because of that decision. That's my first memory of Belwar. Going forward, he's been kind of playing for quite a long time, so I've missed a lot of his actions in some of the previous servers. But I'd say that aggression-wise, he's kind of is aggressive. 8 fun factor, yeah. Fleet command strategy, I haven't seen it yet, so I give him a little bit lower of a score of a 6. Personality and leadership, again, I haven't really engaged with him too much, so yeah, I play under him. He doesn't really run away from a fight. He doesn't really pack up when things get bad, so I kind of like the guy.
Yeah, I've never played under Belwar but I've heard from his players that he is fun to play for, and that's why he has that same crew. He starts guilds, like a lot of guilds over the last several servers. So even though he might not be winning every single server, because who actually does that, but still he's doing something right. These players are having fun, so sometimes fun is important.
Yeah, he's got a really loyal player base, and there are some particular players that stand out. Sparty would be one that's just a really solid player, and that he's just a really loyal soul.
Are you driving through a tunnel because
this other guy?
Are you driving through a tunnel because it sounds like you've driven through a tunnel and you've become a robot? Yeah, your audio quality has gone poo-poo.
Oh, it hasn't?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a shame.
Yeah, you're... it sounds like it's coming back a little bit. But if it does bounce back, you're going to become what you hate the most. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Where did it break up?
You were talking about, I don't know. I don't even remember what you were talking about. So it must not have been that important. Let's go ahead and move on to Scott, because Scott is looking forward to himself so badly. So let's just get Scotty out of the way.
Let's get Scotty out of the way. All right.
Ooh, I see a 5.
Oh. Aggression and fun factor. Well, my experiences with Scott so far. Just look at the chat explode. That's hilarious. No, it doesn't seem like it would be very fun playing with Scott as far as fighting other people. It just seems like, recently, I wouldn't have given him a 5 on that fleet command strategy had he not have suicided his guild on Utopia. I don't know what that move was about, to move fleet into the wormhole just before the wormhole changed. That's really questionable. So I gave him a 5. Personality and leadership, I like the guy. I'd probably play with him just because he's a fun character. And he probably needs some help on the leadership level.
Scott probably needs some help on the leadership level. That's probably why he's not even the GM in his own guild. Do you agree?
I suspect that Trace is going to take over that guild.
Oh, he already has. Trace is already the actual GM of that guild, so might happen.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Unfortunate. I guess those are the big names in the teens. Let's move on up to the 20s. We have your boy Chansey.
All right, so Chansey, I want to pace his high scores with this. Chansey and I have been enemies for years. He came on to Helion to specifically troll my guild. And I made a point to start on Nova to kill his guild, Sesame Street. And so always been on the opposite side. And I met up with Chansey on Utopia, where we got along great, and been with him kind of ever since. Aggression and fun factor, he's a very creative micromanager when it comes to fleet command. And that is something that I would say currently in the new AE generation, no one else has. So he gets real high marks there. Fleet command and strategy, a 9. Personality and leadership, I get along with him great. It's an 8.5. And currently I play with him, so yeah, I would play with him.
But after Antares so far, do you really want to play with him again? I don't know.
Well, So sometimes when you roll a server, you're just kind of up to the luck of the draw, right? It's you're rolling the dice, hoping that the server will roll and morph into something that might be really interesting. That didn't really happen for us. We rolled the 20s in the expectation that there were going to be a lot of farms here. Now the farms ended up all in the 30s, and we don't get to have the fun of farming everybody and then going out cluster with some huge averages and challenging against the grain, right? But I will say this about Antares. We are the smallest Zerg cluster right now, with the exception of maybe the 00s.
Yeah, the zeros
And
are definitely smaller right now.
well,
Definitely.
let's just put it like this. Detroit fan and us have never worked together. We currently have a do not hit, and it probably will not form to anything else because he has such a rich history with, again, as Baylor pointed out, he's got a really rich history with Zahaga in the 30s. And I just don't see that friction. And potentially, I mean, only if a circumstantial thing happens where it's like a really even war and Detroit decides that he wants to keep it like that, and then we win it, try it together. But short of that, I don't really see us working together. They're independent.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. Kind of agree. But yeah, and Detroit is up next. Oh, hold on, I gotta change it 1%. Give me 1 second, and we'll see. We'll see the Detroit rankings. Let me move this and down. There we go. All right. Next up is Detroit. Oh, good. NA. Oh boy.
All right, Detroit.
Speaking of our past ally, here, let's rate Detroit with his NA score.
Detroit. I like Detroit. He has his referral from Greg from Alpha, and I have a lot of respect for Greg. I don't know too much about Detroit other than that, so I just kind of have to make some external observations, and that's how I come to some of the conclusions. Aggression and fun factor. I mean, Detroit and us bashed heads on Mystic, and so that people that haven't played Mystic may want to know, or the people that have played Mystic, they had the largest Zerg by far. It was something close to 300, 350 player base, while the teens and the 20s were practically empty. And the 20s were fighting the entire time. We still fight. And the teens had nothing. They had some relocated guild from Chansey from the 00s. So they have a massive empire. And whether it's temporary on a couple of here servers there and there, but their relationships are pretty I guess well connected.
Yeah.
So they haven't really fought any kind of hard war. I mean, name a server in the last 5 servers I've been on that they actually went against the odds and made something incredible happen. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with you there because before, because that guild in the zeros, that was me, and Chansey was playing with us, and then after a month or so, I got bored, and Chansey's like, "You should give me GM," and I was like, "Yeah, you can," because I'm not doing anything. Because I'm too sad that I was too sad that Scott and the boys lost their galaxy and they all quit, and then we relocated because of that. So, yeah, because they had over 100 people, because it was Detroit and Cloak and Zahaga were all pre-packed there, and I was like, this is just too goddamn many. So we skipped town, and that is how you ended up bumping into Chansey, because I gave it over to Chansey.
Oh, hey, 1 second, I got my boy here. Oh, thank you. Oh, cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah, he gave me some waffles. That's a really nice guy. Thank you, buddy. I'm just gonna leave him out. All right, why don't we move on to Cloak?
Yeah, let's move on to see. I bet we're gonna have some great scores for Cloak. Oh, we see our first "Would you play under no" for Cloak. Love it.
Cloak. All right. So WL, right? This is WL Reborn. Cloak is a master politician. He, we were just shit posting about this, but this is Emperor Cloak of the Roman Empire. His strategy is to divide and conquer, and to destroy and crush the souls of really eager new players, right? So aggression and fun factor. No, not really fun in those type of environments. I mean, how is it fun when you ally so many guilds and create a 300 player empire when the game is only like 600 players large, because we know that China has 400 multis.
Well, Scott said he could control China, so I don't think that the Chinas are gonna make too many multis this time. Scott can
Oh,
control them
true,
for
true,
sure.
true.
Yeah.
Scott's got that completely handled. Yeah, that's why, Scott, I give him an 8 for personality and leadership because I'm counting on Scott to make that happen, right?
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, and Scott pointed out in chat I forgot to mention that Detroit Fan was going to start with us on Mystic, and then he pulled out like 3 days before and then in those 3 days he joined the other Zerg against us and contested us. I forgot to mention that too.
Yeah, I heard DPS on the other time, and he mentioned that Detroit Fan did that twice. And Scott confirmed that. So that's unfortunate. Again, Greg from Alpha is saying that Scott and Detroit's a really good guy. You should trust that guy. So yeah, that's unfortunate to hear that happened twice. But again, it's DPS, and again, it's Scott.
Yeah. Those are things. Oh boy, Zahaga's up next, and we see Zahaga with some not the best scores I've seen on the board.
Zahaga. Okay. Yeah, if I wanted to play under a Protoss guild and role play again, I would just rewind back all the way to Juno, where we actually had #1 averages in every single category, and we zerged the server, and had quite a bit of fun doing that. But the newborn AE entity called Protoss or Zahaga's guild is not that way, is it? It's a farm guild. Aggression and fun factor is really low, and in fact, I think that he just rides on Cloak's coat, so to speak. Because without Cloak, I don't know, Zahaga's just a farm guild.
Yeah, and we heard about DPS talking about Zahaga earlier. Zahaga might agree with you. Or not, excuse me, not Zahaga. Zahaga might say opposite, but DPS might agree with you.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Not too much else to say about him. Let's just move on right along to some other players.
Sure.
Zeno's actually...
your boy Zeno.
So, the mighty Alecus destroyed Zeno. Woo, really impressive. Would I play under Zeno? No. Big waste of time.
Yeah, I figured that one would be pretty fast. Let's move on down to the next one. Whoop. All right. Oh my God, I'm messing up my little box here. We have China up next. How do you feel about China?
China, the old China was super, super strong. The new China is just a shell of what it once was. And I don't know too much. I know that my boy Eric Chen is still there, but he's kind of taken a back seat to some of the other Chinese leaders. And the other Chinese leaders are nice people, but they can't really communicate that well in English, which makes it really challenging for any kind of coordination or diplo or anything like that. So I would definitely not play in a Chinese guild because I don't have a really good Chinese translator, and I wouldn't know what's going on.
Well, they still managed to get some allies somehow. So I guess they found a way.
Yeah, they found a way to basically guarantee that they wouldn't be farmed out. So that's a good strategy. If you want to make sure that you're well protected, China will do a pretty good job of that, just as long as you know that you're really not in control of whatever they do.
Yeah, that's just about right. And last on your list, you put big money Czar on here. How do we feel about Czar?
Czar. Czar is a good guy.
I like Czar too.
he's not superly upfront about stuff. He does a couple of shady things, but he just makes it kind of fun, and he's got a good personality. I don't give him any fleet command strategy because usually I see him more like a lieutenant, not like the war commander. But he does really good on the small ops like galaxy fighting or ninjas and whatnot. So overall, I like Czar. I'd play with him.
Yeah, like I played with Czar on Typhon for a while, and we weren't winning, but it was still fun. I like your Czar enjoys a fight, win or lose, doesn't matter. He does keep it fun. I like that. And yeah, and like just before we got you on, you're like, I thought of a few more people to talk about, and that's not how the show quite works to do it that fast. And you sent me the link to the spreadsheet, but I guess I'll request access because you made it linked. I can't even, or locked. I can't even see it. So there's going to be a few more on top of this too. Let's give me a minute and I'll get it set up.
Okay.
Or if you just want to take a screenshot of the other people, I can add that on and that'll be good.
Yeah. Why don't I do that?
Yeah, just send a screenshot.
Real easy.
Yeah. All right, let's get this.
Yeah, the two people that I forgot. I mean, I did this super late last night when I just had a moment to spare. but I needed to include DPS, of course. Forgot to add him, and I wanted to put Alex on here as well. So let me get that screenshot over to you.
Is there any difference between the Cancer Crew people? I don't know if there's any difference between them. You should just copy paste what you put for FK.
No, there's clearly a difference between Alex and Chris.
Actually, you know what? Between Chris, Chris for sure. Yeah, because FK is who is Chris, by the way. He gets angrier and I think he'll quit more. I think that Alex has a smidge more patience.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Even though Alex does get pretty demoralized sometimes, he gets down. So part of your job, if you're going to be supporting him at the leadership level, is to make sure that he is happy at the end of the day after he gets off work, and so that he doesn't rage quit on you. Because no, otherwise he runs a pretty decent operation.
All right, give me I'll be done in like 30 seconds of doing this. Save as Black Ratings 2. Boop. And I hope I don't immediately botch this and show everything, but we'll see how it goes. All right, Black Ratings 2. All right, good. They're covered up. Perfect. Black GM's small. Where's this? All right. Oh, let me make that a smidge bigger too. Yeah, let's make your GM chart bigger. Oh god, that's too big. All right, much better. And let's move the chart down a smidge. You have DPS up next.
DPS. All right. Well, I'll start by saying I probably would not play under DPS. His ego's a little bit too large, and the types of fights that I like to have is a little bit more humble when it comes to challenging a big Zerg and winning those type of crashes, and then saying a good game, because you don't really want to have everyone feel bad about it. His style is a little different. Like, he baits people into trying to hate on him by saying just ridiculous stuff like not cheating. So yeah, overall, I'd say average GM.
Yeah, average GM baiting haters. Shots fired, man. Shots fired. Up next, you have Alex. Pretty good scores there.
Yeah, playing with Alex on Nexus, he put a lot of effort into guild themes and brushing up announcements and color coding them, and it was just a pretty good atmosphere. It's just a shame that the rest of the Cancer Crew decided to protest against some of the boomers that I brought over, and so that they quit early on. But Nexus had a lot of promise. Two things that we ran into on Nexus that was unfortunate was that Nexus had a small population of players. We came in with the idea that we wanted the entire server to Zerg us, which that's exactly what happened. And this whole new meta of rings and roids stemmed from our creation. No one else invented this stuff, right?
Yeah, we went the whole guild on Nexus. We went all roids because we knew that the 10s, 20s, 30s were all going to Zerg us, and that's exactly what happened.
Exactly. We refused to pact. DPS offered us a pact to go Zerg the 30s at first. We said no, we don't want to do that, because our entire premise was we wanted people to come at us, to make it as fun as possible. So that's how this ring roid meme has been born out of. And yeah, overall Alex gets really high marks, but Nexus it wasn't the right server. It could have worked here in Antares, and we're yet to see exactly how this server will pan out.
Yeah, hopefully. I know we have two big clusters together, and the zeros are small and the 20s are still big, but they're big but still not really that small either. Hopefully Antares is fun with the 3.0. We'll see if the 40s gets together, how they get into play and jump into the meta and all that. But yeah, hopefully Antares is fun. Hopefully. Remember, fun.
Yeah. George, do you still have the link of the forum from Helion that I sent to you?
The forum from Helion?
Yeah, it was a post regarding the Ruin versus RD battle.
Oh, God.
Check on the leadership chat really quick.
Oh, God, how far away is that? How far up is that? My God.
No, not too far away.
Oh, boy. I see you posting the... Okay,
Should be
what?
a couple of screenshots.
Okay,
and it should be a
okay.
couple
I
links.
see the screenshot. You want me to put this up, and you want to talk about it?
Yeah, if you would.
Sure.
One of the first screenshot was the before the war.
All right. Yeah. So glad I had this ready to do beforehand. I didn't see it. So you just get to talk about yourself for a minute while I get this set up too. Okay.
Sure. Well, first server that we started on was on Phoenix. We came from a dying game, kind of like AE is dying right now. The game was Earth 2025. It was the redheaded stepchild game of Mahul's Utopia. And we had a player base that was dwindling because it was constantly. I mean, the thing is, the community rallied against cheaters and trying to fight them off. It was the community as a whole that tried to fight off cheating. But the cheaters at the time were winning because the first bots were appearing. So, you know, if the player base was, let's say, 500 remaining players and you had a bot that came out with 2,000 accounts and the admins did nothing about that, like that, those accounts can destroy you immediately, just overnight. So it was a dwindling game. I took about 300 players from that game and I brought them to my first server, Phoenix. And we're F60s. We were 300 days late into the server. We developed a bunch of tools and websites and all that stuff. You guys probably know that as DSIS and Big's calculators. And Clay also had some forums, and it was a really organized enterprise that we had brought to this game. So it's like we're the energy that the game kind of needed at the time. However, we did learn a good lesson that AE is unforgiving and that people will gladly zerg you when presented the opportunity. So at some point, our F60s, 100 days behind, got zerged by 3 clusters at about 6 times our size. And we fought them for a good month or so until Brightstar decided to suicide our fleets that I was leading. So that kind of migrated over to Helion, which is, you know, one of these main ones where I'm just solo GM. I ran a guild called RD, and RD was supposed to be just the core of the core that we're bringing from Phoenix. And we allied our friends, MD, which is basically all the other Earth 2025 players. They had something like 200 players that Bombay brought over from Phoenix. And RD itself was about 20 players at the time. So at some point, MD had a rift, and it became MD and then a more elite version of MD, which is called Dread. And so they kind of split it off. And then going forward a little bit more, the OOs, so we were positioned in the 20s, but the OOs and the 10s decide to ally MD and feed off all their disgruntlement with what they were having with Dread. And they were gonna come and crush Dread specifically. And so here I was presented an opportunity to decide how the server was going to play out. So on this little left side, you can see that we had the Battle of Big Mofo. Okay, now the fleets were 1.5 billion to 1.5 billion, and RD had a 400 million fleet swing. So we can either bring that over to Ruin and make it 1.9 to 1.1, or I can keep it at 1.1 to 1.5. Okay, and so us being at exactly even, I decided to move on their jump gate with an exact even fleet crash. And this is a story that I want to really see if, you know, maybe we can bring back some glory to this game. And if some of our GMs now, our who's who GMs, would.
This is a story from 10 years ago, by the way. This is from 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, right now, what's the strategy these days? You rally up fleet, you make sure you have twice the size, you send it to another rally point, and you farm. I mean, is that what the new meta or the persistent meta is now?
Oh, like, yeah. People hate crashing now. It bums me out.
Yeah, there's no skill anymore. And so New Cloak is the closest thing to the new GMs that might have the potential to be something like that. I haven't seen that, so I'm disappointed.
Yeah, and I guess you had me put these images up. I guess they were the pictures of the guilds beforehand. Ruin had about 150 million total, Fleet more, and there was a crash, and it looks like you, because I remember that crash, hearing about it, like you had barely won with like just like a fleet or two still alive. Like you had to have your guys hit like every right attack or something like that.
Yeah. So Ruin held position in our home galaxy with Billion Fleet. So we sent from the galaxy over into the same galaxy, and then we moved to a closer jump gate, and then that's our launching point to attack the gate, which is like 20 minutes out with Levy. And so the first crash wave, we lost it, but we killed all their cap ships. And we had just barely enough fleet plus one remaining levy staff that we were able to take that gate from them. It was about 9 hours later. So it was a really long fight. Everyone was online for that whole time.
Yep, and I guess, yeah, you remember you barely hold on in one. Yeah, it's too bad this thread is just, here's some numbers, and then the numbers are smaller below it. Like, that's it. And and Bombay says, congrats, Ard. And Mr. Orange says, says, you beat them off the pile. The end.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful that, I share some things that happened really great a long time ago, and maybe some of these GMs these days will bring that fun factor back. They're gonna have to man up and do an even crash, because I haven't seen it. All I've seen is mainly defensive crashes, but who are the ones that have really instigated offensive crashes? It's Chansey and I, right? Who else?
Zahaga launched against DPS.
I want to give him credit for that. I do. Now, whether that was skill, I don't know.
Scott launched at Baylor. Also a skillful launch.
Scott launched at Baylor.
Oh, Scott says certainly. Scott says certainly not RD on Utopia.
Oh, that's funny.
Haven't you dodged crashes on most of the crashes on Utopia with RD?
No, there was no crashes to be had. What kind of crashes? So here's the thing. If we're talking about the 30s, and if they want to trash talk, the 30s never had a successful offensive cluster invasion without RD's presence. And we were 20 guys, really. So, I mean, we came with a really small entity, and that server just kind of turned out the way it did.
Scott says you haven't crashed once on Utopia.
Yeah, that's pretty true. However, on Mystic, which is I'm still equally there, that's where all the crashes are happening.
I mean, it's been a while since Mystic had a crash. There's been a lot of small crashes on Mystic still.
Yeah, I'd say we probably had no less than a dozen mini crashes. No one has really pot committed since I think it might have been when we actually sent even fleets and lost the jump gate. We sent down to, I think it was 06, and we attacked Cloak's gate, and we lost it. And that was first loss I had in a really long time. But again, it took some balls to actually do that. And I guess kind of we're pot committed. It was like 3 a.m. and we had fleets launch, and it was close. So yeah, Mystic is still where all the fun's at.
Yeah, Mystic is a surprisingly long server. It's been pretty good. Let's see. Oh my goodness, we're at 1:30 my time already. This is by far the longest one. The longest one so far. You guys talk about a lot, Mr. Black, but I think I'm going to give you the boot, Black. I think we got to move along, and I got to start wrapping this up. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed the GM breakdown. Got to see some numbers. Got to see some people who got not applicable scores. It's pretty fun. I enjoyed it. But thanks so much. Yeah, thanks again for coming on, Black. I really appreciate it. And
anytime.
I guess
good show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. And I will talk to you later.
Okay.
There. All right, boys. We gave Mr. Black the time of his life. He got to talk about so much. And I'm just going to zoom in on our vegetables up here real quick. But thanks again to everyone for watching, for following, subscribing, all that fun stuff. The ANN will be back again next week. I don't have any guests lined up yet. But I did want to give a friendly reminder that I want to put that call out for people who think they have like the best accounts on the server. If you think you have like the highest prod cap, did you get the first like base 12 or 13, or you think you have the most occupations? Let me know so I can brag about it on the server. Hopefully, we're going to actually get some action on this server soon. If you think you're doing something fun with your guild and you want to come on and talk about it on the show, you got to let me know. Like I can ask you to come on, but if we want to try to get recent events to talk about. So, and with that, I need some help with you to get that done. So don't leave me hanging on that. And if you're interested in coming on, you can always message me in-game, Discord, Twitch, wherever you can find me. Doesn't matter. If you want to have a couple people on at once to represent your guild, that's fine too. But once again, thank you everyone so much for watching. I appreciate it. I had a great time. I hope you did too. And I will see you guys next week.